Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the Nonprofit Learning Lab for today's workshop. If you have any questions along the way for our presenter, you can type them into the GoToWebinar chat box, which is likely on the right-hand side of your screen. And if you have any tech-related questions, you can also type them there. We will be sending out the recording and materials from today's workshop by the end of the day tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that email. And without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Liz.
Thanks so much, Sienna, and great to be with everyone today. I know it is the first official workday of the year for many of us, so thanks for taking some time to learn with me today. I am Liz Martin, and I'm partner and head of creative content here at Statement Communications. And today I'm going to be sharing some strategies, systems, and shortcuts that we use here at Statement to help make your nonprofit's content marketing easier and more effective in the year ahead. Okay, so specifically today I'll be covering a little bit about the science behind content marketing and why a content-led approach is essential to connect with supporters today. I'll be sharing our step-by-step plan that we use here at Statement to help make content marketing easier and more effective for you and your team. And then finally, we'll be sharing some real-world inspiration from nonprofits that are doing this work well to help jumpstart your own brainstorming. So before we get into it, just a little bit about us here at Statement. We are a branding and communications agency founded in 2016 by myself and my partner, Jen DePacaquipo. I head up our content practice and she oversees our design work. Nonprofits are our focus, and we develop brand messaging and visuals, websites, campaigns, and ongoing communications efforts for our clients. And we are built on the belief of better together. And to us, that means really thinking holistically about how each part of a program or strategy can enhance the other, whether that's content and design, project management and creative. And that's a philosophy that we have found is particularly relevant when it comes to content marketing. So let's get into it. So first, why content marketing? And to illustrate, I'd like to start with a quick story. So 6 years ago, our client, Cure Epilepsy, came to us wanting to develop their first impact report. So Cure is a nonprofit that was founded about 25 years ago by a group of parents to find a cure for epilepsy. And to date, they have raised over $100 million for epilepsy research. And much of that funding has come directly from their community. It's coming from parents, from family members, from friends, and from others whose lives have been personally touched by epilepsy. So as Cure Epilepsy continues progressing toward a cure, they really wanted a way to show their community how their support was making a difference now. So we worked together and concepted this beautiful magazine-like piece that was really meant to be like a giant thank you for their community. So we filled it with researcher profiles, stories from patients and their families, beautiful imagery from their events. And one thing that we really tried to minimize throughout the piece was any sort of fundraising appeal. We wanted the message to be one of gratitude versus asking for more. And we actually went back and forth on whether to even include this little reply card, which we ultimately did end up tucking in the back of the report for folks that might want one handy. But when we sent it out that fall, we really had very low expectations around it generating donations. That's not what it was about. But once it went into mailboxes, one by one, those reply cards came rolling back in. And it ended up being a pretty significant driver of their year-end revenue. And now fast forward 6 years later, they're producing this piece every year. It's become a cornerstone of their annual outreach. It's an award-winning piece. And to me, it's a really nice example of the power of content marketing. So, each year they're really thinking about, how can we add value to our community and, give them something of value with this piece. And by thinking about not just how they can capture attention, but capture hearts and minds, they've created something that is supporting their needs and also giving back to their community. And that's really essential in today's landscape, and there is a scientific reason behind that. So the average person today is consuming about 34 gigabytes of information daily, which is the equivalent of 8 full-length movies. And to put it in context, about 500 years ago, this is about half of the information that a person would consume in their entire lifetime. So as you can imagine, we're getting really good at filtering out anything that we don't deem relevant to us. When we do find content interesting or meaningful, we'll engage deeply, but we have less and less patience for content that doesn't move us. So as a nonprofit, that means it's really your job to develop content that connects with your audience, that makes them laugh or makes them angry or makes them more educated and prepared to navigate our world. And there are so many different formats that can take, but these are just a few examples from out there in the space today. So first, this is a piece from Ford Foundation's Make It Count series. Like many organizations, they're putting out these stat-focused pieces. It's a single, easy to remember data point about a relevant social justice topic. But what I love about their take on it is that rather than just taking a very stark illustrative approach with a single number on a plain background, like you see with a lot of nonprofits, they pair these stats with imagery and graphics from the topic at hand to really help contextualize and humanize this data. And these, they end up really sticking with you. The second example is from AARP, their sister site. This is a site they've developed that's designed for Black women over 40. And in recent years, they've really expanded the content for their community here from newsletters and blogs, more written content to include things like events and polls and games and all different types of interactive content. And one feature I love on this site is this list of playlists that they curate by different moods or activities. Audio in particular is a really great engaging format of content that doesn't demand the same level of attention as video and can be easier to produce. So thinking about ways that your own nonprofit can integrate this into your program for the year ahead can be really impactful. And then finally, this might be my all-time favorite nonprofit content marketing example. This is the Marine Stewardship Council's Blue Cookbook. So MSC's mission is to end overfishing and to restore fish stocks for future generations. And they produce this cookbook that's filled with sustainable seafood recipes so that home chefs everywhere can get in on that mission and cook more sustainably and end overfishing in their own kitchens. So these examples are meant to be inspiring, but if they feel a little bit more anxiety inducing for you, don't worry, you're not alone. 92% of nonprofits, so virtually all of them, are using some form of content marketing, but only a quarter say that they feel that they're doing it effectively. And this data point is pretty stark. So before we get into some tips to help your nonprofit approach content marketing more confidently in the year ahead, I want to just get a quick baseline from the group. So let us know in the poll, what is your biggest content marketing challenge? So is it coming up with good ideas? Is it creating and publishing content consistently? Getting our audience to engage, understanding and communicating our results, or all of the above? And don't worry if it's number 5. So if you can, take a moment, let us know your thoughts. And while we wait for folks to get their answers into the poll, I'll share just a couple of other quick stats from that same CMI survey. 75% of nonprofits say they don't have a documented content strategy. 45% say they don't feel they have the knowledge or tools to run content marketing well. And 31% don't even have someone dedicated to this work. So these challenges are very real, but they do show that with the right tools and people and skills in place, this work can run so much more smoothly and work so much harder for you. So we'll give folks a moment to get their answers in. Okay, great. So it looks like getting audiences to engage at 30%, And consistently creating and publishing content are some of the toughest challenges, and then all of the above, which is very fair. So with that, I will share our step-by-step process that we use at Statement to help address some of these challenges. So just give me a moment. Get slides back up. Please bear with me. Okay, great. Can we all see that? Perfect. All right, so 5 steps for effective content marketing. So I know that it's not quite lunchtime yet, especially for folks in the West Coast, but this piece of lasagna has more to do with content marketing than it might seem at first blush. So just like your grandma or your mom's special recipe, a effective content marketing program is divided into layers. So by serving up different types of content to your audience at different times that serve different purposes, you can create a steady stream of content that's really going to nourish them and keep them coming back to your brand for more. But it also means that some advanced prep is required. So while your content is going to be specific and unique to your brands, we do typically break the types of content that go into an effective program into 3 types of layers. So to start, you've got your noodles. These are your major initiatives, and they typically make up, 30%, maybe a little bit more of your content marketing program. These are things like your year-end appeal, any major reports or publications, events, seasonal campaigns. They're going to anchor your program all year long, and they're the content that everything else is going to fit around. From there, you have your sauce, which is your evergreen content, and this is typically going to make up the bulk of your content marketing program. So this is flexible content that you can pour around your anchors or your noodles to keep your program humming along all year long. Things like issue or topic-based content, articles and tools, how-to guides, profiles, impact stories, all can make up your evergreen content. And then finally, you have your toppings or your real-time content. And we really recommend having this be no more than 20% of your program because it's content that you're often creating on the fly. So these are things like news alerts, analysis of things happening in the landscape right now, your brand's take on trends happening in the digital ether, like your own version of Spotify Wrapped at the end of the year. By establishing your sauce and your noodles ahead of time and having those things ready to go, it becomes much easier to sprinkle in this real-time content, as it happens, and adds a little spice when you need it. So how do you create this expertly layered content marketing strategy? At Statement, we follow these 5 steps. So number 1, you want to create your big idea. And your big idea is essentially the message or perspective that you're putting out into the world to your supporters. It is the single most important element for success for your content marketing program. And every nonprofit, just like kitchens, every nonprofit's big idea is a little bit different. So you think about, the kitchen where your grandma cooks versus the kitchen of a high-end restaurant. They have different ingredients on hand, they're serving different diners, people come there for different reasons. So by taking the time to define your big idea or the context in which you're operating, you can ensure that your content is consistently valuable and relevant to your audience. And a good big idea is related to your mission and vision, but not necessarily identical. It's often a little bit more colored by current themes or trends happening in the marketplace. It's sufficiently broad because it should cover all the types of content that you're putting out. It takes a point of view and it's ownable. So your big idea should be something that your audience can't easily find elsewhere, with other similar organizations in your space, and you should have the expertise to back it up. And then finally, it should invite the audience into the conversation. So if your big idea shows the change that you want to create in the world, your audience should believe that that change is possible and understand the role that they can play in it. So here's what that looked like in practice for one of our client partners, funders concerned about AIDS. FCAA works to mobilize philanthropic funding to end the HIV crisis. And historically, this funding has come from a pretty small subset of grant makers, but FCAA saw an opportunity to bring more types of funders and organizations into the fold by showing that HIV is not only a health issue, but really a linchpin social justice issue for today. So we worked with them to articulate this big idea that unity across the philanthropic community is key to end the HIV crisis. So by collaborating across issue areas and geographies, grant makers can work together to advance not only the health and human rights of women and girls, LGBTQ people, Black and Latinx communities, and others who are disproportionately impacted by HIV. They established this idea about a year ago, and it's working. They're bringing in new members and partners. They're growing their online digital presence, and they're securing media attention around this topic as well. So to create your own big idea, it's really important to have a solid sense of your positioning, your place in the market. If you haven't conducted a brand exercise recently, that's a great place to start. And going through a brand audit can help you build consensus faster around your positioning and the themes that are going to shape your big idea. You can grab a statements version of the brand audit at this URL here, and we'll share that after the workshop as well. So with your big idea established, you can move into step 2, which is creating your content pillars. So content pillars are content that you share at different times for different reasons to serve different audience needs. They are specific to your brands, and you can really think of them like the ingredients for your content marketing program. So we go back to our layers. Every brand is going to have their noodles, they're going to have their sauce, but maybe your sauce has lots of mushrooms and peppers, and another nonprofit is making a white sauce. So by establishing these content pillars, your nonprofit can become known for certain topics because you're posting about them consistently. It becomes a lot easier to generate content ideas and populate your calendar so that you're not faced with that blank piece of paper panic every month. And it can help you be more organized around your content so you can really understand what's resonating with your audience and create more of that type of content. So what does that look like in practice? Here is an example from one of our clients, Tides, which is a nonprofit in the social justice space. We typically start with these 4 universal content pillars when creating content pillars for our clients. And this shows how Tides content is falling into some of these different pillars so that they're meeting different audience needs at different times. So number 1, the educate pillar. This is content that really works to build trust and credibility with your audience by sharing knowledge and tools, things that make them smarter. This can include research and surveys, checklists, news alerts, infographics, executive commentary. This piece here from Tides is sharing 3 quick tips on social media to increase the effectiveness of corporate philanthropy. So very snackable, actionable information. The second pillar is connect. So this is any sort of people-focused content that helps to create an emotional tie to your organization and mission. Things like community profiles, Q&As, photos and video, polls, even user-generated content from your audience. In this piece, Tides published an Instagram collab with Cyndi Lauper to show their work together to advocate for reproductive rights. Number 3, the inspire pillar is a really critical pillar for nonprofits in particular. This is content that celebrates progress toward a goal. It instills hope and positivity in your supporters. So things like case studies, impact stories and stats, testimonials, progress updates, motivations, these can all fall into that pillar. In this piece, Tides had featured some members of the Georgia Muslim Voter Project as part of a roundup post showing how leaders were working successfully to get the word out in the lead up to the election. And then finally, the promote pillar is just what it sounds like. It's content that's meant to drive interest and engagement in your offerings. And that can be, you know, a donate CTA, but it's not just about bottom of the funnel promotions. We can ask our supporters to subscribe for updates, learn about our mission, request resources, attend an event, spread the word. Here, Tides is promoting a webinar that they had on maternal health. So how do you create your content ideas and create your pillars? Typically, we advise that nonprofits start by establishing their categories, using those universal ones on the previous slide as a starting point. So in some cases, you might want to merge a couple together. You know, maybe you're combining connect and inspire into one. Some nonprofits will add an additional category, such as advocacy or, you know, humor or entertainment. You want to season to your audience's taste, but ideally establish 3 to 5 so that you have some variety across your content, but you're still working with a manageable number of pillars. And from there, really work to develop at least 6 to 10 ideas for each pillar. Make it a team effort with your colleagues, with others. And as you populate your ideas, you want to prioritize ideas that are specific and ideally repeatable. So, you know, an idea like legislative updates is a little bit too broad to then turn directly into a piece of content. So think about, is there a policy that you want to feature? How might you talk about it? As a letter from your executive director? And anytime we can turn those into series, you're going to be doing yourself a huge favor by giving yourself more individual pieces that you can use to populate your program all year long. And then finally, we really want to treat this as a living document. So, you know, be adding to it as new ideas come up. Keep an idea file as a notes doc on your phone. Gen AI tools like ChatGPT can be a resource to generate ideas. I like to drop a specific URL, like your blog, into ChatGPT, ask it to come up with more related ideas. And then keyword tools like Ubersuggest or Google's People Also Ask function can be a great resource to understand what your audience is wondering about and use that as fodder for new ideas. So from there, once you have your ideas mapped out, you're ready to create your plans. So your content plans are really like the recipe for your content marketing lasagna. And we find that this process works best when you split it into 3 parts. Your communications plan is your big picture. Your editorial calendar covers your monthly priorities. And then finally, your project management plan is all the on-the-ground details you need to get specific pieces of content done. So to start your communications plan, this is something you'll establish whenever you're launching a new content marketing strategy and then look to update typically once a year. It identifies what we want to achieve from our content marketing, so our big picture goals, and then the strategies we'll use to get there. So you want to include 2 to 3 measurable goals, the audience or key audiences that you're looking to reach, the channels that you'll use, your major initiatives, and then evergreen content themes for the year, so your noodles and sauce, roles and responsibilities to get your content complete, and then KPIs that you're gonna watch to see how you're tracking toward those goals. We typically build it in Google Docs. You can create this in PDF, or Notion is a great option as well if your nonprofit is in there. And with this in place, it becomes much, much easier to create your monthly editorial calendar. So this is a snapshot of all the content that you'll publish during that time period. Include monthly themes, awareness months you might be thinking about, the channels and specific dates where you plan to publish content, topics, content and design formats, who's getting what done, and then any A/B tests that you plan to run throughout the month. So we like to do this once a month. Some nonprofits we'll build it out up to a quarter. We don't recommend going any further out than that because the chances are good that you'll have to redo it. And this typically lends itself well to either a spreadsheet or a calendar format. And then finally, your project management plan. This is a step we don't always see nonprofits take, but we highly recommend including this so that individual pieces of content, the production process can run more smoothly. So we like to build this out in Asana or another PM tool. You can use Excel or Notion as well. And you'll want to include individual tasks and due dates, who owns which task is key to keep things moving along, key milestones, and then the status. And this is something you're updating in real time. And then one thing that I really want for all of us in 2025 is less channel FOMO. So more than half of nonprofits are publishing on 10+ channels each month, which is a lot. And if I have one tip for reducing the effort involved in content marketing without impacting effectiveness at all, it's to prioritize value, not volume in your channels. So think about which ones maybe aren't working as hard for you as they could, that you might want to sunset for this year. Something to consider are, does it represent less than 5% of your total web traffic? Do you consistently see little or no engagement? Does it take a lot of time or specialized or external expertise to maintain? And does it align with your organizational values? So we've seen quite a few clients leave X in recent months for this reason. Some channels, as you're thinking about channel selection for the year ahead that we're seeing work well are executive LinkedIn, text or SMS, and small group convening. So something to think about as you plan for the year ahead. So with your plans in place, we move into content creation and publishing, step forward. So this is the oven where we put our ingredients in, we come back out with that pan of bubbly goodness. There's so much more I could say on this topic, but quickly, the few tips that we use here at Statement to help make this process easier are brand messaging and visual guidelines. So if you haven't created one, just establishing a simple toolkit with some approved boilerplate language, colors, fonts, and basic style rules can be a huge time saver, so you're not recreating the wheel every time you go to create a new piece of content. Task level ownership, which I touched on briefly in step 3, but I cannot stress enough, is a huge thing to make sure that you're doing to avoid duplication of efforts and things getting stalled out. Design and copy templates, if you don't have these in place, can be a great time saver for recurring pieces like newsletters or social graphics that you're creating month after month. And then content repurposing. So I assure you that you will get tired of sharing a message long before your audience will get tired of hearing about it. So thinking about your anchor content and what you can be slicing and dicing in different ways can help you get the most mileage out of your work. And this is just a quick example of a copy template we use for one of our clients' newsletters. As you create your template, one thing to think about is not only formatting guidelines, but also stylistic or framing guidelines. So you'll see here in the headline space, we recommend lifting a compelling single sentence insight right from the source. The more precise you can get in your templates, the less work you're going to have to do on the back end. So really investing a little time here can be well worth it for your program in 2025. And then finally, the taste test or your analysis. Our goal here is to have you avoid busy work at all costs. So doing a super deep dive into every single metric month after month is typically not the best use of time. Save those deeper dives for your semi-annual and your annual reviews, and monthly, really just be looking at how individual content performed that month. What did we learn from any A/B tests, and what specific insights do we want to apply to next month's content or upcoming campaigns? So if you have an hour to spend on analytics each month, these are the 3 things that we recommend looking at. What was the best performing and lowest performing piece of content on each channel and why? Did anything unexpected happen with our content, good or bad, and why? And this can be performance, but it can also be process. Did we struggle to post a video on LinkedIn, or was it easier than we thought it was going to be to produce the type of content that did really well? So thinking about things to codify or to leave behind in the month ahead. And then finally, did we learn anything through A/B testing, and do we want to try any new tests? We are big fans of experimentation here, and it can be as simple as taking an email and splitting it into 2 sends with 2 different subject lines. So thinking about where you can weave this in for the year ahead is something we definitely recommend. So to recap, some key takeaways that we recommend keeping in mind to make your content marketing easier and more effective in 2025. Take the lasagna approach to your content, define each layer and then put them together. Spend some time and really invest the effort to create a strong, big idea, because it will make everything else not just easier, but more effective and impactful. And then finally, think about value, not volume, with your channel selection, your content creation, and your analysis for your program in 2025. So that's what we have for you. Happy to take any questions from the group.
Awesome, thank you. We do have a couple questions. The first one, can you give a few specific ideas to increase engagement on socials?
Yeah, this is a great question. So I think one thing we always like to work on with clients is that point around channel selection. The truth is that it's getting harder on specific channels, such as Facebook, to drive any sort of organic engagement. So really thinking about kind of going deep versus wide with channels, and recognizing that it can take time to build engagement, I think is one thing we always recommend. In terms of formats, we're seeing success with motion. Video is obviously an engaging type of content. So if you have the resources to integrate that, that can be a great way to drive engagement. Making sure that you're using tagging appropriately, especially if you're on LinkedIn, tagging people in addition to organizations. And then trying to think about social being a two-way street, making sure you're being prompt about responding to any comments or trying to start a conversation on your own, tagging folks who might have something to add to the conversation. Are all tactics that used consistently over time can help drive engagement across social.
Awesome. Okay. We have another kind of relating to the same thing. How often should you be posting on social media? Is daily too much, or is that good for algorithms?
Oh, that's a great question. And I hate to say it depends, because I think there are certain parameters to, our best practices to keep in mind. But, it's going to depend on your capacity and, the size of your nonprofit and, the type of content that you're putting out there. I will say that certain channels' content has a longer shelf life than others. So, for example, if LinkedIn is part of your strategy, posts tend to hang around there for days or up to a week or more. So it's not necessary to be posting twice a day, for example, on LinkedIn, and you can actually end up cannibalizing a little bit of your engagement on individual posts. Channels like Instagram or TikTok, can have a little bit of a shorter shelf life, but again, it's really about quality versus quantity of content. And if you take the time to create something really engaging that folks are responding to, the algorithm likes that. And, they want folks to, be, engaging with content, and they'll keep serving it up. So I think as a minimum, any channel that you consider yourself to be active on, make sure you're posting maybe once a week as a baseline. And then from there, experiment and see, what kind of results in the best engagement and visibility for individual pieces of content.
Great. Okay, we have one more question.
Sure.
Should the same person be posting?
Yeah, so should the same person be creating and then posting content is, I think, the question. Yeah, and it doesn't have to be. I think we have found that whoever's posting content should understand the technicalities of the content that is going live and kind of how we want it to display, or at least have a baseline understanding of content quality, best practices. So if we're posting a carousel, making sure that all the images go up correctly in the right order, and tagging is happening appropriately. But if that role can be served by someone different on the team, that can sometimes be helpful to keep creatives or those who are producing content focused on that versus having to toggle back and forth. Community management for social is it's a bigger job than people give it credit for, and it can be time consuming. So if you have a larger team and a way to split that up, great. But if not, certainly the same person can also own that whole process, soup to nuts.
Great. Okay, we have another question. Let's see. The documents used, they just want to say the documents used to organize your content process were especially helpful. And then they
Great.
have a question. My client hates social media and gives it to the intern, which results in content and a voice that isn't leadership level, which is often the first and most frequent way people see our content. How do you convince leaders to invest their time?
Yeah. Oh, it's so tough. And it's such a common challenge that we see. I think there's still a perception that social is easy, or it's something you can kind of shunt off to a junior level. Um, I think that if you want to make a case to your leadership team, why it makes sense for them to establish a LinkedIn presence, or, be spending the time to contribute on LinkedIn, pulling a few examples from across your space of other organizations doing similar work that are doing LinkedIn well can be really effective. We've seen that work with clients. I think also making it as low of a lift as possible for your executives is key. So thinking about how you can brainstorm, you go back to your sauce, your evergreen content, can we come up with a bank of, ideas that we can be dripping out over, a month or 2 months or 3 months. And then if things need to be adjusted, on the fly, we can do that. But most everything is solidified. We actually have like an idea template or question document that we'll use, to prompt executives and get their ideas. Maybe having an intern do the initial draft, and then having your executives fine tune or tweak as needed can be a good way to divvy up the responsibility. But in general, we really recommend having the strategy be something that's held more at a senior level, that initial planning and ideation, and then using some of those more junior resources for execution of an established strategy is a way that you can make sure that social is working as hard as it can for you, but not every piece of it needs to be done by the executive themselves.
Great. Okay, I know we're a little over, but we have one last question that just came in.
Great.
What is the value of posts with collaborations?
Ooh, yeah. So we love these if you have either, some brands might have more well-known, celebrities or influencers that they're working with, but this can work even if you're, for example, hosting a conference and you've got a keynote speaker with a following. Instagram gives you a way to co-publish a piece of content between two channels, so it appears on both, and your nonprofit really gets the lift and the visibility of that other person's following. So, very simple to do on the platform, but something to think about, if you have someone coming to an event or maybe a gala to help get the word out to that person's community and hopefully just give awareness bump to your organization.
Awesome. Well, that's all of our questions for today. So
Cool.
thank you so much. This workshop's come to a close. You will all receive the materials and recording from this workshop by the end of the day tomorrow, or you can download them on our free webinars page. So thank you so much, Liz, and thank you so much, everybody, for participating.
Thanks so much, everybody.